Hello and welcome back to a series on learning Java, and today we will be talking about arrays. To begin with, let's say I want to keep track of some numbers. I'm going to declare some ints. One, say this one's 0. 2, it's 2. 3, 60. 4, oh, we need to declare it with a type. 4, keeps down. So I got now my numbers. Maybe I want more numbers. Maybe I want different numbers. I can change these. They're integers. I can keep track of them. But it's kind of inefficient because I have to make a new variable every time I want a new one. And maybe I want a lot of numbers, so then it would become really inefficient to have them all in separate variables. Luckily, Java has a mechanic that we can make this a little bit better. It's called an array. It's kind of like a list of data, but it has certain properties. We define it starting with int, and then 2 square brackets. This tells Java that we want an array of ints, data values with the type int, but we want them in an array. Then we give it a name. As always, we're going to assign it a value. We put this in curly brackets. And this is kind of confusing because it looks like a block of code, the same character we use for blocks of code, but it's not. This is just how we define the array to begin with. I want to put in it the same numbers I had in it before. Just the same numbers I want to keep track of. I just want to keep track of them in a different way. Let me go ahead to my line. So let's talk about some of the properties. I'm going to start with getting one of the values out of this array. Say I want the first one. I'm going to put the index, again, in square brackets. Basically, everything to do with an array is in square brackets, except for when you define it the first time, you have to use the curly brackets. I want the first number in the array. Printed. 2. Wait, 2 is the second number in the array. Why'd that happen? Because indexing for arrays starts at 0. Remember how I said when we did loops that you want to get used to counting beginning at 0? This is why. Every array, an array is really just a list, but it's 2 lists. One list is a list of integers starting at 0 and counting up by 1. And the other list is the list I defined here. And it maps between them. So when I say I want number 0, it finds in that first array, the one that's just the normal numbers, and it finds 0. And then it finds the same spot in the second array. So let's see what value's there. We find 1 in that top array, and it's the second one. So then in the bottom array, we're going to find the second value, and that's 2. That's one way to think of how an array works as a map. Or you can just remember that they're indexed starting at 0, and you count up. Now I can also just reassign values in the array. So let's say I'm going to change index number 2 to 34. Index number 2 is actually the third element, remember? So I'm changing the 60 to 34. So far, this looks like we're just using these. Basically the same thing as just using int variables, but we're using these indexes instead of different names for them. That's basically what an array is. We're just keeping data that we want together in an organized way so that we can access it all in a similar way. Now if I print numbers 2, index 2 of numbers, I suppose, print 34. That's the value you just put there. That's exactly what we expect it to do. Now there's another property of arrays called length. This one doesn't start at 0, I guess. It's the actual length of the array. So this will give us 4. There's 4 elements in the array. Each individual value is called an element. This is element 0, element 1, element 2, element 3. So there's 4 of them total. If I try to print numbers 4, well, I'm trying to get the 4th index in an array that only goes up to 3 indices. 0, 1, 2, and 3. There is no 4. I'll throw an error. It's called an array out of bounds exception. That's what you'll see when it prints the error. It'll also just stop your program because that's what errors do. Okay, one more thing. I want to see everything in the array. I'm going to print the entire array. This will print a bunch of characters in hexadecimal. You won't have any idea what it's saying. It probably starts with the word Java. You can't do this. It won't tell you the elements in the array. It'll just give you like the memory address of the array. Don't do that. It doesn't help you find the elements in the array. If you want to find the elements in the array, you need to use a loop to cycle through them. I'll show you how to use that in a little bit. But before we do that, let's make a string array. String arrays are also very common because we often want to arrange different kinds of text into a list. Let's call this one fruits. The way I learned Java on a website, and they really like to use an array of fruits. I don't know why. But there's also a different way we can define the array. Rather than giving us values to begin with, we can just say we want an empty array with 3 spots in it. New string array with 3 spots. Now that's not index 3. In fact, index 3 in this array isn't defined. It is an array with 3 elements. And each of the elements currently has a value called undefined, which means we haven't put a value there yet. It's the same error we would have gotten in the very first lesson on variables when I tried to use a math operator with that variable other number before I'd given it a value. It doesn't work. It'll throw an error if you try to do anything with it. If you can get the value of it, it'll tell you it's undefined. You can't do anything with it beyond that because it doesn't have a value. We're going to see this new keyword a lot in the future. For now, just know we're creating a new string array, and it has 3 elements. As I said, if we try to print fruits index 0, there's nothing there. It's undefined. It'll literally print the string undefined. It won't throw an error. It just won't tell you anything there. It's undefined. However, it does have a length. Length of 3. We told it we need 3 elements. The length of an array can't change. So when we define it to have 3 elements, it will always have 3 elements. We can't change that length. We can just change what is in each of those value spots. Let's give it some values. Fruits 0, apple. And here, third element will be now I can print all of the elements in the array. Fruits of 1. No, fruits of 0. That's our first element. 0 index. 1 is the second element. Oh, I want that phrase. Third element. Give us apple, banana, cherry. Didn't put any spaces in, so they're all going to run together. Especially if you're using numerical data, you really want to make sure you put the spaces in. When you have strings, you can usually tell where they break if they're real words. If they're not real words, you might not be able to see what's going on. Now let's make that proper and print them separately. We're going to use a for loop. I can define each number. So this is how we usually start. We're defining a variable called I. Instead of giving it a value, I'm going to use a colon, and then type the name of an array, numbers. And what this says to do, this is really a different loop entirely. It just happens to have the same name as a usual for loop. This will cycle through each integer I in the array numbers. They're not indices. It's not going from 0 to 3. It's going to hit 0, 2, 34, and 16,254, because those are the elements in the array. Remember, once we reassign this value, it's going to stay there until we change it back. So this is now no longer correct because we reassign one of the values. I'm going to print I like number. I'm going to add the value I. As I said, I is going to take the values of the elements in the array, so I will print I like the number 0, 2, 34, and 16,254. That's it. Thank you for watching, and I'll see you in the next video.